by Reverend Canon Lynch of Cork, Ireland. They do not apply to them the dignified term of serpent, which is the symbol of wisdom, but snakes to imply what is low and evil. Baseness could go no further. The Irish race has suffered humiliation even to this day through this willful traduction and carefully directed perversion of their history. Fables have been invented and taught to the people as genuine facts and bona fide history. The writer has, like others, absorbed a lot of their fiction and must confess it was some task to unlearn it and to adjust his mind to the reception of even obvious truths which conflicted with pious untruths. It is certainly a preposterous thing to allow a body of pretentious impostors to instill their falsehood into the minds of the growing youth. Moreover, this political priesthood insults our intelligence by considering themselves solely as God's anointed and his special favorites. We are told that in England and Ireland it was the practice to give the priests in many places a number of shares of distillery stock as provision for their future. The priests speak of their churches as plants, just as if they were factories and they are fitted up with slot receptacles to catch any fractional currency which might either by advice or suggestion be enticed from the pockets of the worshippers. It is safe to say that light is advancing and that truth is progressing regardless of this reactionary force, which is now exposed for the first time in a manner which reveals their plot. It cannot help but open the eyes of mankind to the great fraud, and more especially awaken the Irish people who have been so foully betrayed and sold into the hands of their oppressors. In the citations which I have given to show and prove that the Bible is an Irish book, the names of places and the names of characters given show plainly the direct connection with and their derivation from the Irish. The elucidation of the Great Pyramid and of the topic Egypt will add to this proof, so that anyone who comes with open mind and unbiased judgment will not fail to see it. Every lover of truth qualified to judge will be convinced that the names are Irish and only slightly changed in the form and spelling, changed only enough to deceive the unsuspecting. It is seldom that a man arises outside the ranks of the clergy who develops a knowledge of the elements upon which the religious myth is constructed. To solve the mystery of the origin of the Bible, this knowledge, and that of the Irish language, combined with a true perspective of history, was necessary. It required also a true insight into Ireland's past and the villainous intrigues of the Roman and British priesthoods, and the role they played in shaping events of momentous consequence in world affairs. To conceal those facts from posterity, they had recourse to the scheme of falsifying the world's history and substituting, therefore, a tissue of lies and inventions. The British propaganda has been fostered by the Government Board of Education and such misleading works as Pennock's Catechism of the History of Ireland, which were put into the Irish school system. Persecution and propaganda have served the purpose intended and have caused the Catholic Irish to place an almost blind belief in the integrity of their priests, who are a part of the Roman Church and ably doing the work of Rome in carrying on this deception, while the English churchman has done his part to the same end, namely, to keep knowledge of Ireland's great past history under cover of oblivion. The Irish Catholics were directed away from a study of the Bible instead of towards it, and made to depend on what the priests saw fit to dole out to them. Otherwise, it is reasonable to suppose that long before this day some Irish-speaking person could not have failed to detect the idiomatic Irish in the very warp and woof of the Old Testament. It is an undeniable fact that the Irish-speaking Roman Catholics were not frequent readers, much less students of the Bible. I have laid some stress on this phase of my theme, but not inordinately so, considering that I am announcing the greatest discovery in the history of all literature, that the Bible is Irish and of Irish origin. I am aware that this will be a shock and surprise to students and intellectuals in all the enlightened countries of the world, to be shown that they've been made the victims of a fraud. It was bound to be discovered in time, for truth so evident could not be hidden forever from the minds that were free from bias. Anyone qualified to approach the truth could not fail to see it. Even though the schemers were reiterating their claims through the press and from all the pulpits of Christendom, there is no doubt in the writer's mind but that the inner circles in British statecraft and high church, as well as those of the Roman Church in Britain and Ireland, are keenly aware of this truth and carefully guard the secret of their fraud. A few years ago, the writer read A History of Ireland by Thomas Moore, the famous poet and author, in which he bewailed the fact that at every turn in his quest for knowledge and facts, he found a conspiracy of silence and suppression. He produced his work under just such discouraging conditions, but he rendered a service to posterity by publishing his observations of the attitude of those persons who were in a position to assist him in his search for facts, had they wished to do so. My studies and investigations have enabled me to discover facts and truths as presented here, and these truths will stand every investigation. It all goes to prove that even the cleverest forgers and falsifiers are not safe from exposure and discovery. So it is the case with the Roman and British forgers. Although the imposition of the Savior Jesus and the substitution of him for Iessa brought great riches to the Roman Church, it required a great and tremendous effort to succeed in making it appear to the world that he had an actual historical existence. The people were in a terrible state of ignorance and superstition, a condition which was favorable to the Church in effecting this cherished idea. Her ambition to make that one project alone successful was the cause of inflicting untold misery and suffering upon the people of 3 continents during the wars of the Crusades, which were instituted for that end. The Roman Church was obliged to enlist practically all Europe in these wars. It is estimated that there were 2 million lives lost in carrying out that scheme in the struggle to drive the Mohammedans out of Syria in the 10th and 11th centuries. It was during the occupancy of the so-called Holy Land by the Crusaders for a period of 87 years that Rome gave the names to the localities and places there, which are mentioned in the scriptures, and which names had not been before identified with such places. During that time, they did everything that they thought necessary or that circumstances would permit in preparing the ground to place marks of identification about each locality, which was selected to be the birthplace or scene of activity of each of the mythical characters to whose fictitious existence special significance or prominence was to be given. Such, for instance, is the example of the patriarchal character Abraham, whom they assigned to the land of Ur in Chaldea. Ur is an idiomatic Irish word and means the sun, fire, and the east. The word also expresses an Irish idea or conception of heaven. Ur is connected with the fabulous Irish land Tir na Nog, the land of the young, or the land of perpetual youth. The meaning of Ur in this instance is fresh, green, plenty, new, not stale or old. Liberal, the land of plenteousness, the heavenly kingdom. And Abraham himself is most obviously an Irish idea of the personified sun. There can be no room for doubt as to this fact, as he comes from Ur, the sun. And to be true to Irish mythic form, each syllable of his name is a name of the sun. The word Ab is an Irish name for father, and here signifies father or creator sun. And Ra means the moving or revolving sun. And Am means time, for the sun is the governor and lord of time and regulator of the seasons. And furthermore, as Abraham is the sun, he comes from Ur in Chaldea. Chaldea, a mythical and fictitious name falsely said to be of a country in Asia. The name is from the Irish word caul, C-A-U-L, a veil, secret, hidden, meaning mystically the great unseen. A Culdee was an Irish religious ascetic of the worship of Iessa, a seer. Abraham has 2 female consorts, one of whom he marries. She is Sarah, from the Irish word sor or sork, sark, meaning delight, light, pleasure, bright, conspicuous, clear, the day. The other woman was named Hagar, from the root word akor, meaning covetousness, desire. she represents the night. The letter H is only an auxiliary in the Irish alphabet and is used as an aspirate, but the doctors have used it as a regular letter for deceptive reasons in the formation of the name of this mythic character, and instead of using the letter C, they use the G. These two letters in the old manuscripts were often used one for the other indiscriminately. And so we have Hagar, and as she is desire, she is not Abraham's true wife, but his concubine. She bears him a son, Ishmael, the Irish Ayes Moal, the son, and Moal means bald. The young sun, or early morning sun, is said to be bald, as he has no rays until later. So Ishmael is the young or morning sun born of the night. So, in the Irish Bible myth, we find that Abraham the son has two wives, Sarah the fair one, the day, and Hagar the dark one, the night. Sarah is jealous of Hagar the concubine, and has Abraham send her away. In the phenomena of nature, the day always sends the night away. Chapter 6. The Irish Pope Kings, formerly the rulers of Britain. A writer in the Encyclopedia Britannica, in the article on Ireland, gives a very adroit presentation of when and how the Scots-Irish were converted to Christianity. He seems to be conscious of the deception that has been perpetrated on the world, and that the history of this event could be presented to us in an improved and more plausible fashion than it has ever been done. This deficiency he has endeavored to make up by cunningly mixing into his narrative in a neat dress a composition of some truth with fable and fiction, and all in such a manner as to make his story to the uninitiated appear like a very fair and truthful account. But now that the truth is out, his story falls flat, although cleverly gotten up and evidently intended to be a very satisfactory summary of Ireland's past. As the Britannica is supposed to have weight, it appears to be a good medium for circulating such misleading information. It is quite obvious that the object is not to tell truth, but to connect up all the missing links of the story, which his predecessors might have been a little slack about making it look right. It would really be amusing if it were not so unjust to see how he tries to mix up things by trying to confuse the reader as to the identity of the Scots, the Picts, and the Southern Irish of Munster. The truth is that they are all of one race and people, and these names have been given to them separately as a part of the scheme to confuse. The nearer to the seat of the great crime, the greater the need to confuse any would-be investigators. This writer says, quote, "At that time, 314 AD, the Irish had possession of many places in West and South Britain and must have come in contact with Christians. These were more numerous and the church better organized in South Wales and Southwest Britain, where the Munster or Southern Irish were, than in North Wales, which was held by the Scots proper." End quote. Encyclopedia Britannica, 9th edition, page 247. This is an example of how he tries to confuse his readers by making it appear that there was easy intercourse between the Irish and Roman followers. There was no such intercourse. The adherents of each church were practically identical with their armies. The Roman Church was only where the Roman spearhead was and nowhere else in Britain. Nor did the Romans lay claim exclusively to the title of Christians until, as is said, after 325 AD, after the Council of Nice. And there was no moving about of the inhabitants from the Roman to the Irish lines. They were kept as much apart as the peoples of the French and German territories during the late World War. There was no difference in race between the people of Munster, whom he calls Irish, and the same people whom he calls the Scots proper in North Wales. And there was no difference between those two peoples and the Picts. They were all the same people, and Era or Aran, called Scotia by the priests, was the motherland of the race. The name of Scotia or Scotland has been transferred to Alba as part of the deception. As there has been a great crime committed and a monstrous imposture put over on the people of the world, they found it to be extremely necessary to write an account of those people that would be confusing and to change even the local names of places. So those British priests have written up a lot of mythical accounts of tribes and characters with which to do this. It is very easy to see through when it is explained, but it requires study with the necessary knowledge at first to understand it. The accounts of the early beginnings, as given in the histories of Ireland, Scotland, and England, like the early histories of other countries, were all written and composed by the clergy and for purposes of deception and for the very reasons set forth in these pages.